Hello, you're watching news from Kazakhstan. It is Friday, January 18th. These are the headlines. President Nazarbayev continues with staff reshuffling. New Nur Otan Party Deputy Chairman, Kazakhstan Region Governor, and Head of Arlan Special Division appointed. Dismissed Karajan Basmunay employees still unable to get reinstated, holding rallies in Aktau for more than a year. Recovery operations continue after a massive storm in Jambul region. Our reporters assess the scale of the damage. Karajan Basmunay employees' labor dispute in Aktau is still unresolved. Around 20 oilmen gathered for a campaign on Thursday. They say the company ignores the national leader's instructions and the workers' demands.
The first and foremost claim of protesters is fulfilling the president's commission. When the head of the state heard the oilers' demands at the Security Council meeting, he decreed to satisfy them. Thus, executing the president's commission will meet the people's demands. Yet the labor dispute still remains unresolved. Around 40 people took part in the protest rally in Aktau to demand reinstatement and full payment of earnings to date. The demonstrators referred to the president's words about the oil companies and insisted on getting at least 8-month payment from the former employer. The Karajan Basmunay management sent the company representatives along with police officers to answer the questions of protesting oilers, who resented the absence of the Kazmunay Gas Exploration and Production Company president and a likely candidate for the regional administration head office, Alik Aydarbayev. In turn, the company's vice President Taras Khituov flatly stated that fulfilling the workers' demands is impossible. We are ready to provide these people with workplaces in the new company that was specifically established for this purpose and has already secured employment for 900 fired oilers. However, we cannot fulfill the demands of the demonstrators as they contravene the law.
President Nazarbayev appointed officials that he dismissed earlier to new positions. His bodyguard Anwar Saddikulov was made head of the NSC's Arlan Special Division. The president has also found a new job for the former deputy prime minister.
Karimbek Kusherbayev is appointed the governor of his home region of Kazalorda, succeeding Bolatbek Kuandikov. Over the years, Kusherbayev worked as the governor in western Kazakhstan and Mangistau region before the riots in Zhanaozen. According to news agency Kastag, the leadership of Mangistau region will be also replaced, with the position of the governor likely assumed by Alik Aydarbayev, the current head of Kazmunay Gas Exploration and Production Company.
Meanwhile, the ruling party is getting younger with the appointment by the president of 40-year-old Baurjan Baybek as Nur Otan's first deputy chairman. His predecessor, Bakhajan Sagintayev, was named first deputy prime minister and minister of regional development.
Я предлагаю к назначению кандидатуру Baurjana Baybeka.
I propose the deputy administration head Baybek Baurjan as a candidate for this position. He is still a young politician who has not even turned 40. Nazarbayev expressed hope that the relatively young deputy chairman will encourage the Kazakhstan youth to join the party and bring a bit of creativity to its operations. The new party leader was born in Almaty and used to be a Bolashak scholarship holder. He studied in Germany and obtained 3 higher educations. For the last 4 years, Baybek Baurjan has been holding the post of the deputy head of presidential administration.
Parliamentarians and politicians comment on the staff reshuffle in the country. The former see no real threat to their work or their own fate, while the latter interpret the so-called castling of the same personnel as another manifestation of clan warfare. Opinions are gathered in this report.
Perhaps the comments "we don't care" can be accepted only coming from female MPs reacting to the recent staff reshuffling in the government. Members of the Coordinating Council at the Civil Alliance believe that the development is not likely to affect the legislative branch as long as no one touches the MPs themselves. If we look at the situation from the civil society's perspective, it doesn't matter who stays in the power, particularly in the government. The most important thing is that we're staying, as we can influence matters and push for accountability. I personally do not care who will lead any of these offices. Since I have suggestions related to improving life quality for our population, I believe everyone will like them. At the same time, former MP in opposition Istasılbek Kojakhmetov is concerned about the psychological well-being of officials, since any new reshuffling causes stress and takes time for the state bureaucracy to adjust accordingly. It is bad when ministries are constantly moved around. Indeed, this process causes lots of stress for state officials, since their leaders play an important role in the system despite legislative barriers. Nevertheless, the redistribution of functions, positions, and the reshuffling in general does hinder the work of the public sector at large. Political scientist Bulat Abilov interpreted the matter as the rise and fall of specific political clans. He also shares his thoughts about the beneficiaries of these new appointments. Primarily, this reinforced the clan of Prime Minister Karim Masimov, and in this sense, Bakhatjan Sagintayev is his direct placement. Nurtay Bakayev has also strengthened his position, thus these two officials benefited the most from the reshuffle. Regardless of the reshuffling itself as well as its meaning, many are skeptical about the changes at the top. This is quite understandable, as people cannot actually affect any of the changes, and the deck is handled exclusively by one person at all times.
The new Ministry of Regional Development caused surprise and raised a row of questions from experts. They link the creation of a new agency with social tension in the region, as well as strengthening control over governors. In our next report, we attempt to find out what exactly will Bakhatjan Sagintayev and his staff's new role will be.
The new Ministry of Regional Development has caused quite a political surprise. Analyst Olganay Umbutalieva cannot decide whether authorities want to monitor socio-economic situation in the regions or the very work of the governors. There are serious issues regarding regional governors, as it is not clear who is monitoring their work. Officially, they represent executive branch and thus should be accountable to the government. However, they are appointed directly by the president, leaving the government aside. In the end, it is not clear who is controlling the regions. In his blog, politician Amirjan Kasanov has already disapproved of the new structure, saying that it would just cause unnecessary budget expenses. I can't agree with the president concerning the new Ministry of Regional Development. We already have government ministries and regional governors, so there is no point in wasting budget funds to maintain a separate agency with unclear authority. In contrast, economist Mukhtar Tayjan does support the president's idea. After his trip to the regions, the politician became really concerned about people's life in remote villages and believes that in the next 5 years, the new agency headed by Bakhatjan Sagintayev will first link all distant areas with other regions by major highways, then lay power lines and provide all villages with drinking and industrial water, as well as cellular communication. Once interstate highways are in place, people from South Kazakhstan will be able to trade and provide their residents of the west of the country with fresh fruit and vegetables. Also, the lack of good roads deter free movement from south to north, from Kazalorda to Zheskazgan or from Zheskazgan to Arkalyk. The Ministry of Regional Development will be in charge of several sectors, including development of business and social entrepreneurial corporations, construction, housing and communal services, as well as land resource management. At the same time, all observers note the breathtaking career rise of Bakhatjan Sagintayev, who now juggles the position of the minister and the chair of the first deputy prime minister at the same time.
In the meantime, Zhambul region is recovering after a destructive hurricane that struck late last week. Schools are being repaired, communication restored, and losses counted in Zhanatas, a town that suffered the most. With more from the scene of the incident, here is our report.
Zhanatas settlement in Zhambul region is classified as a single industry town, as the life of around 23,000 citizens is centered around the Kazphosphate plant. The local residents agree that Zhanatas had never faced a hurricane as severe as the one that walloped the town last weekend. The wind was blowing from that direction, creating a whirlwind. On the night of January 12th, the 50-year-old Sidi Kamarov, his wife and 4 children were woke up by a loud noise when the balcony window panes and door got broken and wrenched out by the force of the wind. The next moment, the room was covered with snow. The Amarov family has already requested the government assistance with the damaged property mending and insulation. However, the local authorities have not provided any certain time frame for starting the repair works. The dining hall of the largest Zhanatas education facility, the Mukhtar Auezov school, was transformed into a hot meal station where soldiers were cooking for the locals affected by the disaster for 6 days in a row. During that period, the Zhanatas residents consumed around 330 pounds of meat and over a ton of bread. Unfortunately, the current conditions won't let us for culinary frills. So given the choice of provisions, the foods we serve is simple but tasty.
Строго, но со вкусом.
The Sarasur Regional Hospital is yet to get back to the routine operation. The windstorm blew off a part of the roofing, which resulted in significant temperature drop inside the premises. Under normal conditions, the hospital can accommodate 150 people, while the current situation limits the number of patients to 30. These days, the majority of those requiring medical help suffer minor personal injuries, which allows the hospital staff to prioritize the youngest patients born during the snowstorm. While walking down the corridor, I've never heard the infants cry because of the cold or anything. We do swaddle them well, as it was pretty chilly during the blackouts. However, they are very calm babies. I believe they feel that the current situation requires a tad of patience. Meanwhile, the rescue team on a ceaseless duty in Zhanatas assures that no severe weather outbursts are forecasted for the near future. The forecast promises a cloudy weather with the average temperature of 23 to 24 degrees and wind gusts of 1–2 meters per second. No snowfalls expected. All the major damage control and communication repair works in the town have been finished by now. The windbreaks, slate fragments and damaged constructions have been removed from the streets. Power and heating supply has been restored in most settlements, buildings and houses. In case there are no unforeseen events, the first military groups will start leaving Zhanatas on Friday.
Kazakh politicians and public officials are concerned about the state of the national uranium reserves. They are alarmed by Rosatom's policy of extending its activities well beyond the Russian borders, including on the territory of Kazakhstan. More on one of the most closed markets in the country, up next.
In terms of uranium reserves, Kazakhstan holds the second place in the world after Australia, but is still the absolute champion in regards to its production. Many experts believe uranium is the energy of the future. Former diplomat Kazbek Bisibayev says that the battle for this energy source is quite serious. France sent its troops to Mali allegedly to save the local government from radical Islamists. But the real reason that very few know of is the dislocation of a uranium deposit in the region currently controlled by the radicals. Basically, who controls uranium controls the future. Ex-MP and economist Orazali Sabden says uranium represents not only national wealth but also state security. Uranium-related policies should be completely different from those for oil and gas. Unfortunately, many mistakes were made in this regard, as we've sold out some of our lands. Uranium, though, is directly related to state security. When it comes to this resource, the population must know everything about it. Thus, some hearings on the matter should be held in the parliament. According to opposition politician Bolat Abilov, the people of Kazakhstan, who own all of the natural resources of the country per constitution, don't even have an idea of what uranium actually represents. People don't get too deep into understanding nuclear industry. Quite understandably, they do not really know about our rich uranium reserves, second or third largest in the world. Everyone talks about oil and gas, while uranium and nuclear industry receive less public attention. Of course, this creates opportunities to benefit from executing shady deals. Nowadays, experts are most concerned about the appetites of Russian Rosatom. It is possible that in the future the nuclear agency will attempt to overtake the local Kazatomprom. So far, though, the leaders of the two organizations are strengthening not only business but also family ties. For instance, the current chairman of Kazatomprom, Vladimir Shkolnik, is in fact the go-between for Vadim Zhivov, the CEO of Atom Redmed Zolota, Russia's largest uranium producer.
Vladimir Kozlov's wife Aliya Turuzbekova says he feels good and cheerful. The politician serving at the Petropavlovsk colony for inciting social hatred was granted visitation rights on Thursday. Leader of the unregistered party Alga finally got to see his wife for the first time in several months.
The prison visit lasted for half an hour. According to his spouse, Vladimir Kozlov spent some time in the quarantine but is now fine. Uncle Vova, as he's referred to by his predominantly younger cellmates, lectures inmates in politics and life outside prison walls. In addition, Kozlov began to actively study Kazakh language. Aliya Turuzbekova says that even behind bars, her husband remains quite optimistic about the future. I haven't seen him for about 2 months. Of course, it was quite a long time for me and all of us were worried about him. But he's an optimist and has such an upbeat mood, as if he has a specific plan. Of course, this plan is framed by the current regime, but we will go ahead and fight for our goals.
In an unprecedented turn of events, a nighttime demonstration took place in Astana. The organizers now promise to gather people every 16th day of the month under the slogan for justice. Last night, around 70 people took to the streets for a sanctioned campaign, despite the snow and the wind.
Who's in charge here? We are. The park at the intersection of Pushkin and Shakarim streets seemed a bit noisy for a 7 p.m. Wednesday. 70 people organized a rally there despite the cold and biting wind. Some brought flags without symbols, others had posters with quotes from the president's article on the Society of Universal Labor. We tried to consolidate 3 different groups of population, including folks from the suburbs, because we are the people and we are in charge. We decided to organize our first night rally because we want to live a civilized life. We want warm homes, want good roads, so that our children could enjoy living in comfortable conditions. The crowd of sleepless protesters included forcibly evicted occupants of a dormitory, soon to be replaced by a new thermal plant, and former security guards of LLP Blessed Legion, who are unsuccessfully fighting for their salaries for already 3 years straight, despite holding a court order. One for all and all for one. There are also separate individuals among the protesters. For instance, an entrepreneur from suburban village of Kazılsuat, Tukbolat Igasanov, is a victim of fraud. Failing to get justice in courts, he decided to look for it in the crowd of protesters. I protest against the chaos in legislation and demand justice. How is it even possible that a crook pulls his scams ignoring the court? Due to colds, the rally didn't last for more than 30 minutes. However, earlier the same day, organizers promised to gather people on a regular basis, and it does seem possible due to plenty of discontent, mostly related to court activities. We ask to support the second initiative of prominent figures to unite around the public observation chamber Richmond's court. We need control over the judicial system, which does what it wants lately. Astana activists are quite fast when it comes to new ideas. They already declared the 16th of each month as the Day of Justice and intend to use various methods to convey their opinion to the authorities in regard to what they believe is wrong in the country.
The new workforce center set up in Almaty by the ruling party branch and the local administration intends to get rid of the unemployed. In a good way, as a class. The first 50 volunteers were taken straight from the main unspoken job center, Seyfulin Street. The next report has more on yet another social experiment.
For already 6 months, Sayat Bayakhmetov has been coming to Seyfulin Street in the center of Almaty looking for a job. He moved here with his wife and a child from a neighboring Taldykorgan. However, the beekeeper found himself irrelevant in the city with bigger opportunities than his hometown. Now Sayat takes any odd jobs he can find. Along with others here, only dream of permanent employment. Think about it, the whole street is packed with unemployed people. It's not like they want to be here, but the truth is they need to feed their families. The local unemployed consider themselves lucky when they find $130 odd jobs, as normally employed would pay $10 to $20 a day. At times people spend days on the streets to no avail, and headhunters are no longer relevant since for several years people have been willing to take on any job standing right on the streets with their tools ready in plastic bags. On Thursday, Sayat was invited to the new labor resource center. He was promised to get some help with registration and employment. But first, he must pass a 3-month locksmith training course. Members of the ruling party, Noratan, who initiated this project, believe that a certificate will help Sayat and other 50 unemployed people on Seyfulin Street to find a job sooner. It will also help them to actually leave the street. They will study in the evening because they work during the day. Our primary goal is to rather keep them here away from the streets in order to prevent and reduce crime rates. The staff of the center says that this is only a pilot project and they will not be able to take care of all unemployed. Statistics insist that there are 43,000 of them registered in Almaty alone. It is yet to be seen whether the initiative will be a success in 3 months or if Sayat will return back to Seyfulin Street with his plastic bag of tools.
Residents of Turksib district of Almaty are troubled, but not by a noisy nightclub or a cafe, but with a neighboring church. They claim its expansion caused their homes to literally start bursting at the seams. More on the unwanted neighbors in this story.
The beautiful view of the church and the ringing of bells doesn't make Almaty residents happy, and some of them are collecting signatures against the expansion of the Pokrovsky Cathedral at the expense of their living area. The workers have started the excavation works without waiting for spring. Pensioner Maria Turlaeva wedded her husband in this very cathedral. When the expansion of the church started, she vowed not to go there anymore, adding she just wanted to be as far from the noisy neighbor as possible. They removed the excavated soil on heavy-duty trucks driving through the narrow street, then brought the backfill and started laying the tiles. We have to bear it every year since they do renovation works and expansions annually.
Котлован копать начали зимой.
They started excavation works in winter, which affected our houses. Every single movement is felt inside. The construction works causes cracks in many apartments, as most of them are quite old. The cathedral was built in the post-war years. When Khrushchev was in power, the first floor was demolished and the building was fully reconstructed only several decades later. Over the years, the church has helped thousands of needy, currently supporting pensioners, low-income citizens and even housing the district reception center. On Wednesday, there were no church offices in the cathedral and reporters had to address their queries to the construction manager, who is a regular churchgoer himself. I admit that construction works caused some shaking of the ground, but not really significant. A representative from the emergency department inspected the site and confirmed that vibrations were not strong enough to cause cracks in the nearby houses. We believe they want to take advantage of the situation, but we're not a commercial organization, as we do only charity work. Workers say that signatures and protests of local residents will not stop the construction, and the cathedral expansion will be fully completed in 5 years at best.
Residents of Sabalak microdistrict, Kazakhstan region are disgruntled about public transportation scheduling. Local authorities assure there are 2 buses on the route and the waiting period for passengers should not exceed 60 minutes instead of the 3 hours experienced by residents. Our own reporters experienced the problem on themselves. We turn to our final story for more.
Catching a bus has turned into a life-or-death matter for Sabalak residents, as missing one means postponing the plans for another 3 hours. There is only one bus to serve the residential area on a regular yet gappy departure schedule, which is strict on route time and direction. There is only one bus running along the street every 3 hours with no turns or route alterations. It takes 25 to 30 minutes of walking in freezing cold for my kids to get to the bus station and go to school every morning. The schoolboy Bikmurat is walking down the road hoping for compassion of the passing car drivers. I missed the 10 o'clock bus and now I have to walk to school because I don't have money for taxi. I hope someone will give me a lift, as it's a long way to the town. The situation is hardest on those coming back home on the last bus departing at 7 p.m. After a short contemplation about the recent past of local public transportation, the 6th grader Gasarkhan shared his thoughts on the current situation. There used to be 3 or 4 buses servicing Sabalak. I think they reduced their number to make even more money. The bus departure latecomers make profitable clients for taxi drivers who don't hesitate to raise rates in the absence of alternatives. We charge $14 to the Sabalak bus route terminal. We can even drop the client to the home door. Both the bus and taxi drivers seem to benefit from the poor transportation service, while the passengers suffer consequences. Meanwhile, the authorities are stuck in litigation with the winning bidder of the public transportation tender. There were supposed to be 2 buses running in the opposite directions with a maximum interval of 1 hour. Currently, we're engaged in litigation against the colleague service company for failure to fulfill the contract liabilities. It turns out there is no one to regulate the transportation order for 300 buses and 450 fixed-route taxis. Meanwhile, Kazakhstan seems to be the only regional center with no municipal public transport. The city administration will be able to call the private carriers to account only after replacing the defaulting bidder.
That is all we have time for now. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.